Only a one lot, yes. I mean, one of the things that I would recommend, based on just listening to what you have, what some of you have already said, what we talked about at the last meeting, and what Ken has said, is that you still have to establish your maximum footprints based on our ordinance, and I think that's a good thing, because it does provide a certain amount of flexibility, because your intent is not to, like I said, draw every little chimney and everything like that, but just establish it, because we're not establishing it through X number of feet from here and X number of feet from this point with attached. But that the future changes to the footprints is really the question that's before you as to how you want to address that. I think it still should be approved by the Planning Commission. But the question that is really before you, if I understand Ken's question, is the homeowner say in it.
I'd like to hear from them.
I think,
And right now, let's make this clear. We're functioning under the old rules right now, and the change we have before you and that got approved last time requires all of our current homeowner signatures for us to make it. And so we haven't made that change. We haven't circulated a petition yet because basically Ruth and Tim haven't gotten something together. So as regard to where we're sitting right now, I got to have these two gentlemen's signatures to get that change. And how many homeowners do we have now, Mr. Brecky? 11. So we got to go get 11 signatures to make that change that we just, that you guys approved subject to last month.
Converse of that would be we would have it on our meeting agenda for that revision, and then people who had an interest in that could come down and speak pro or con against that.
Yes, and that's the way I think it ought to work, because you ought to be the arbiters of reason between that's what you get paid for, those big checks. The arbiter of reason between two side-by-side landowners, between developers and homeowners. So what we're talking about right now really doesn't affect what we got going right now. If one of these guys don't want to sign the ordinance or the thing we're going to circulate, then we can't make that change. And that's just the way it is, because we had that signature on our plat. What I'm suggesting is that going forward, that's really not a good idea. It's just not a good idea.
I want to hear what your residents' thoughts are.
I'd like to hear from them.
Ready to step up there, please?
Good evening. My name is Clark Brecky. I'm a homeowner in the cottages at Price Farm and also a member of the board of directors of the Homeowners Association. My concern in all of this is, as we talk about whether or not we're going to require signatures, I'm a little concerned if you do away with that requirement, that how will you ever know if one homeowner objects or 100% of them object? I mean, the reason that was there, I assume, or why it exists today, is so that this board would know that there really was support among homeowners to make certain changes that might come before this board. But if you don't have signatures required, how are you ever going to know that? I am in favor of having the current plat change to allow detached buildings. I'm not against that. But I am against not having the opportunity for input and the transmission of that input to you folks as part of the decision making that you may make in any development. And that's all I need to say right now.
My name's Bob Farrell. I also live at Cottages Price Farm. I came down and talked with Ruth after I read in the paper that the plat had been changed without my knowledge. I was very concerned about what it actually meant. When I bought in Price Farm, I brought into a concept because I'm a retiree. I wanted single story living. My understanding from the plat, and you probably have it right there in front of you, the drawing, was that we were going to have units, duplexes, quadruplexes in a certain area in that complex. And over off of additional road, we'd have single individual homes. Come to find out, this change that was approved put single homes all the way across the front of the subdivision, which to me changes the look of the place totally. Now, Ken indicated that he feels it'll improve it. It may do so. The thing that concerns me is I bought into this concept. I was the first person that bought a place there. I was the first person to occupy. But I did not get a chance. I did not have any earthly idea what was happening when this was presented. And I strongly agree with Clark that provision needs to be in there to protect the homeowner so that you know what's happening after. If you're the first person in a subdivision and somebody tells you what they're going to do and shows you what they're going to do, and then mid-course totally changes that, you may not want to live there anymore. So you really put the homeowner in a bad predicament. And I would strongly suggest that you keep that there, and that before you ever approve any revision to that plat, that you have the signatures of the occupants, the present occupants. At least they need to know what's happening, and they need to get a chance to voice their opinions. After this was presented, I talked to 6 of 8 occupants. They didn't have any earthly idea about this happening. We'd never seen a drawing. We had no idea what they were intended on doing. Now, I don't think that's communications. And I was very upset. Ruth can tell you. I came down here and we looked at the drawings and she explained to me what was happening. I said, this is the first time I've heard about it. I ask you to please keep that requirement intact. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Ruth, do you have some examples of or can come up with some examples of what are done in other locations with situations like this?
Actually, Farragut is unique from what I understand from talking with some other folks around here, but Farragut with regards to this aspect, but that's kind of the cornerstone of why Farragut Incorporated was with the homeowners, the neighborhoods and that sort of thing. Melissa just asked me, she's like, well, can we change the percentage rather than unanimous? Change the percentage of, because it is hard to get unanimous, and like I said, and requiring the notification of all property owners, that can be part of, that a list be submitted to the town and we send it out, and that can be part of the fee and things like that. We do that with the rezonings. There's and Ed was on that committee when we came up with that when you go for a rezoning, there's a $50 charge, and we send out postcards and notifications and that sort of thing.
Kind of what I was thinking when I was going to ask the homeowners, well, you got a notification like that and knew that it was happening to come down here, so you could voice that. Would that be something that's acceptable to you as a homeowner? Yeah.
I have to stand up and say that's not accurate. We've announced to homeowners at 2 meetings that we were revising our preliminary site plan to
whether you communicate or didn't communicate. I'm just looking at the mechanism that we might come up with.
At 2 homeowners meetings. Now, did we talk about it for an hour and a half? Did we pull out a large plat? The answer to that's no. Now, I do agree with a couple of things Mr. Farrell said. I don't think a developer should be able to come in here and to use his words, totally change a development. That's not, you shouldn't be able to do that. But I disagree with him that any revision, those are his words, should have every person's approval in the plat. Right now, you don't do that. You don't do that right now. The changes that require homeowner approval basically sit in Ruth's bailiwick, because we change things right now on where lines are for swimming pools. We change things slightly if we find some this is a foot this way or this is a foot that way on a line or on a road. We change little things right now that we don't go back for. And in my opinion, in a development that has quads, duplexes, detached homes that all essentially look alike, changing a couple of, actually it's 3 duplexes to 6 standalone homes, that's not a big change. Now, this is exactly what ought to happen, is when a developer comes up with a change that they want to make, there ought to be notice and everybody ought to talk about it. Now, we're in a different boat, and I haven't tried to get out of that boat. I think I told you when we met last time that I didn't like that rule, but we were going to play by the old rules. So I got to take this list of 10, and if Mr. Farrell doesn't like it, all he's got to do is not sign, and we can't make the change. And I won't be mad at him. So it's just, we play by the old rules. Just know whatever the rules are. That's the set of rules we got to play by. But I think in the future, it's just not the right way to do business. I don't, especially, I still own 89 of those home sites. If I want to change them a little bit, I ought to be able to change them a little bit. I ought to be able to modify them a little bit to better be able to sell them. I shouldn't have to ask 10 guys what I can do with 90% of my property. That's just not. Otherwise, what I'll do is, what developers will do is they'll come in and they'll plat 5 houses, and they'll plat 5 more, and they'll plat 5 more, and they'll plat 5 more, or at least that's what I'm going to do. The next plat I file will have 4 houses in it. And so you'll have to deal with me every month. It'll waste my time, waste my money, waste your time. I mean, if you push it to an extreme, and like I said, lawyers are good at doing that. If you push it to the extreme, that's what you're going to have. But I think the better thing to have is once a year or once every 6 months, all the homeowners know what's going on. You come down and talk about it, and you guys decide. If it's totally changes it, then say, you're nuts. That totally changes it. You can't do it. It's not fair to whoever bought the house. But if it's just a modification, particularly in a large development like this, if it's something that's within the character of what was intended, then we ought to be able to change it. So, but like I said, and if not, just put the rule down so we'll know it later. But we have told a number of homeowners in person that we were revising the master plan or the site plan, and I know that I mentioned that at 2 meetings that we did have a change in the plan in front of the town of Farragut, and we actually, I'm sorry about this, we made jokes about how difficult it was to get the town of Farragut to do anything on a timely basis. I mean, that was one of the jokes that a couple of people made. So I take issue with saying that there was no knowledge that we were changing the site plan. That's simply not true. Now, did they make enough effort to come look at it? Did they come to the hearing? But it was not done in the dark. And there was specific mention at 2 homeowners meetings that occurred. Because
everybody there, I mean, it just sounds like.
He said